Hello, fellow cyborgs, and welcome to my final summer reading wrap-up. I'm going to be wrapping up the month of August today. I read 14 things in August, so let's just get started. First up, I reread The Awakening and read for the first time the other stories in this collection, The Awakening and Other Stories by Kate Chopin. As I said, I've read The Awakening before. Upon my first reading experience, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and on the second reading experience, I gave the whole collection 3 out of 5 stars as well. However, I feel like I understood The Awakening a lot better. The Awakening made it on my top 30 books that I would read over and over again in my life if I had to choose 30, because I feel like every time I reread this, I will get something more or think about something differently when I'm reading this. I definitely think that this is a feminist classic for a reason, and I think that if you haven't picked up this little novella-length sort of novel, it's quite short, that you ought to give it a try. Next is a buddy read. This is Mr. Fox by Helen Oyeyemi. I buddy read this with Acacia Ives and Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings. I give this a 4 out of 5 star. It was a bit confusing. The way that the blurb on the back of this, it makes it sound like there's one big long narrative in here, whereas this is more like a collection of short stories linked together by a narrative strand. Think similarly to A Portable Shelter by Kirsty Logan. I really liked some of these short stories, and some of them I didn't get really, and I also found that I don't think I quite understood all that was happening in here, all that was going on whilst I was reading it, but I would really be interested in rereading it knowing what I was in for now. I really liked the writing style, and I would definitely be interested in picking up another Oyeyemi. I finished listening to the second Skullduggery Pleasant novel. This is Playing with Fire. After listening to Scepter of the Ancients, I decided that I probably needed to reread the Skullduggery Pleasant series before finishing the series up. There are a total of 9 books. I've read the first 7, but to wrap up this highly emotive, long-term series for me, I really want to be up to date on all the facts and characters, hence re-listening to the audiobook of the second one. This was actually more enjoyable than I remember. I don't think I've listened to the audiobook before because I originally read the second one, even though I originally listened to the audiobook of the first. It was just so much fun. Rupert Degas is absolutely fantastic, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to this before going to bed. Then I picked up William Shakespeare's The Phantom of Menace by Ian Dozier. This is a Shakespearean sort of play adaptation of the movie The Phantom Menace, which is episode 1 in the Star Wars universe. This was fun. At 50 pages, I kind of was like, meh, do I want to continue reading this? It's going to be like a 3-star book, but it's only 150 pages long, so I figured I might as well. It was very close to the movie script with some exceptions. In here, Jar Jar Binks is a political mastermind who pretends to be dumb and clumsy so that the Jedis, Qui-Gon Jinn specifically, who's a bit prejudiced against the locals, will listen to him and get the Gungans and Naboo people to cooperate together. R2-D2 also has a few lines in here. He's not just beeps and squeaks, even though that's adorable in the movies. It was interesting to see his voice. Yoda speaks in haiku, which was also really interesting. On the whole, this is just fun. I don't think I'll be continuing on with the series, but I think the adaptations have more merit than I thought they would. In between group buddy reads, Acacia and I buddy read this. This is The Jane and Bertha and Me by Rita Maria Martinez. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I was expecting this poetry collection to be more like poetry fan fiction of Jane Eyre, but it ended up being much more about Bertha than Jane, and more modern set than set within the Victorian period. The characters I knew and loved were reimagined quite heavily in here. So if you are interested in some raw poetry that deals with topics of feminism and with insanity and who is said to be insane and who isn't, and the last part of this, it's split into 3 parts, a couple poems that I really enjoyed that were more of what I thought this whole collection would be. But if any of those things that I mentioned before interest you, I recommend you pick this up. There is a lot of merit to be found in here. Then I picked up Fangirl. This was a buddy read with one of my lovely subscribers, but unfortunately I DNF'd this at page 106. I read the first 10 chapters and I just wasn't enthralled. I wasn't compelled to pick this up, and especially for a 400-page book, if I'm thinking that at best it's going to be a 3-star book, then I just didn't want to spend my time reading this. The only sections in here that I found quite interesting and up my alley were the fan fictions that Kath was writing. If that's what I found interesting, why not just read Carry On? I saw where the plot was going, so it was a bit predictable for me, and after I decided to DNF this, I did look up the plot on Wikipedia, and I called a couple of the things that were supposed to be plot twists or dramatic moments. So I just think that I read this too late. I think perhaps if I read it 2 years ago, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. So I don't think that Rainbow Rowell is really an author for me, and that's totally fine. She's beloved by many, many others. So disappointing. I ended up giving this, I think, 2 out of 5 stars in my DNF rating. I don't think that I didn't like it, but it was okay, and I didn't want to read 300 more okay pages. Then I picked up The Dream Snatcher by Abby Elphinstone. This was another buddy read with Acacia Ives and Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings. I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars. It really, really disappointed me and underwhelmed me. Problem number 1 is our main character refers to herself and her family as gypsies, and from my understanding, the word gypsy is derogatory, if not just simply really problematic. And for a book that was written in 2015, I thought perhaps the author should have taken into account the controversial nature of that term and perhaps used a different one, especially in a middle grade where kids are going to mimic what they read unless they have parents telling them not to say certain things. I thought the world building wasn't there at all. The author would use really big, fun names for different villains or different prophecies, but that was about all of the world building we got. It was just a string of capitalized nouns that created this phrase that was supposed to be really eerie. There is a middle grade love triangle thing in here, which completely didn't interest me. It's not a romance triangle per se, but there's the guy that you grew up with and you're friends with, and no, here's the bad guy that suddenly you're becoming friends with. What's gonna happen? And then the main baddie, whose name was Skull, was just so lame. I didn't understand why he was so evil, why he was so feared, why he was so bad. It was so much telling and not showing. The only character that redeemed this for me and made it not a 1 out of 5 stars was Griff, the wildcat, who is Maul's friend and companion. That's Griff right there. But frankly, sometimes I thought that Maul's response to Griff felt a little romantic rather than just best friends or pet. And so that sort of weird borderline relationship between them kind of just was the last straw on the pile of I don't think this is for me. Something that was for me though was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I read this with Granger Danger and Mishmash, who are subscribers of mine, and Mishmash also has her own channel. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm in fact thinking of just pushing copies onto all of my friends and family members because this was such an easy read, such an accessible sci-fi jumping in point, and it secretly dealt with so many topics about human culture and human civilization that we just take for granted. Topics like, are AIs persons? Why do the deaths of children horrify us and make us more sad than the deaths of adults? What about sexuality, and why does sexuality need to be such in a box? And why do we judge other cultures based upon our own culture? There was just so much in here to dig apart, so many characters that were fun to read about, and I wanted to read more about some characters that we only got a few flashes from. The different alien species in here were completely distinct, and the author really took her time to make them not only physically incomparable to us, but culturally incomparable to us, but only on the surface, because in their depths, these aliens are making us question why we find their behaviors alien. It was just so subtly, brilliantly done. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I loved it, in fact, though I'm not sure I'm going to be picking up the second book. I'm just not sure. And I can't really tell you why without spoiling the ending of this, but I'm just not sure. Then I picked up A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen, which was, I think, originally written in Norwegian, but my edition does not say who translated it. I don't know. I feel very bad or not having the translator name. So I've recently been kind of stalking Hannah Tay and her booktube channel on the recommendation of Acacia Ives to check this lovely lady out, and she recently talked about The Doll's House being one of her most influential books. I had it on my shelves and decided it was the day to pick it up. This was so enjoyable. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It doesn't have that many characters, which makes it really easy and simple to read just on your own, but it tackles so many complex topics about the Victorian household, gender roles, and the hypocrisy that can be found between classes, and it's just so full of things. This reminded me a lot of The Awakening by Kate Chopin. So if you like The Awakening, read this. If you like this, read The Awakening. It was just so great. I'll definitely have to pick up more Ibsen in the future after I get through the tons of other plays already on my shelves. But yeah, this was such an enjoyable afternoon well spent. Then I read Heat Lightning by Helen Hull. This was a buddy read with a subscriber, Jamie. I will link down below my review of this, but just to sum it up real quick, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The atmosphere was really well done, but unfortunately it made me feel not nice. The characters are really well done as well, and there's a lot that can be picked apart in here. So if you're interested in any of what that sounds like, then pick it up because it'll be worth your time. Then I buddy read Maisie Dobbs with Acacia Ives and Kate Howe. This was included in Kate Howe's mystery starter kit that she sent me for my birthday. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It would have been a 5-star book had the mystery storyline wrapped up in a more complete and psychologically explorative sort of way. Half of this takes place in 1932. Maisie Dobbs has just started her detective agency and is working a case. Half of this book was sandwiched in the middle, details how Maisie came to have a detective agency, what she did during World War I. At first, I was disoriented in this change of time period, but I became enamored with the historical fiction aspect of this book, and I think that's where this book really shined. But as I said, when we finally got back to the modern day and the mystery needed to be wrapped up, it was lackluster in comparison to that glorious historical fiction. Then I moved on and finished the audiobook of The Faceless Ones, which is the 3rd Skullduggery Pleasant book. This was as enjoyable as the first and second. This book, however, is kind of like the turning point, the beginning of the turning point to where the Skullduggery Pleasant series stops being so funny and sarcastic and relatively light and starts getting really dark, which Derek Landy is really good at writing. So yep, I'm currently listening to and reading the 4th book, Dark Days, and I am just so excited to be picking the series back up from the beginning. Then I finished The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. This was recommended to me by Sophie Carlin, and I buddy read this with Alina from Marlin Alina, though she ended up not finishing it on pace with me because things got in the way, as they do. This was a 5-star read for me for so much of the book, but after part 5 wrapped up, the pacing of this sped up so quickly, and I found that I no longer felt connected to the characters. I felt like I was being pushed away from the original storyline, and the end of this book kind of felt like Kingsolver was more interested in giving us an overview of modern African history rather than finishing up with the narrative of these women and their family and their lives. I underlined so many things in here. The beautiful writing is just one of the things that makes this shine, but for me, my investment in the plot definitely dwindled toward the end of this. But I would certainly still recommend it, especially if lovely writing is your main priority with your reading. And last thing that I finished in August was Skylight by David Hare. This is a play. I saw the play done by Bill Nighy and Carey Mulligan streamed into my local movie theater when I was in Canada, and I was so impressed with the clever script. I knew that I needed to pick up a hard copy eventually, so I just gave in and said, if you buy this, you need to read it upon day of arrival, which I just managed to do on the final day of August. This was so great to read. The script is so incredibly clever. It's so simple. There's only 3 characters in the play. For the most part, actually, in all scenes, only 2 characters on stage at a time, and it's just so clever. It tackles so many different topics like grief, love affairs, the nature of love, the nature of parenthood, the nature of adulthood, and class struggles. It's just so much packed in here. It was so enjoyable to read and relive like the scenes that I remember of Carey Mulligan and Bill Nighy play acting at. And yeah, this was a 5-star play, one of my favorite plays ever for definite. We did it! We got through all of those books! So that was what I read in the month of August. What a great punchy way to finish out the summer months, and I'm so glad they're done because please, autumn, I beckon you to me. Bring me pumpkin spice candles and things and leaves, and I know that's not actually going to happen because I live in California, but we can dream, can't we? Please let me know in the comments down below what your favorite and least favorite thing you read in August was. Thank you for watching, and until next time, continue to be lovely. You are a sun tanning baby seal. Weird. I can't, it's weird. It's weird. Just, you're weird. I just want to thank my patrons who are supporting this channel through Patreon. Your continued support is ever so appreciated, and it just makes my day every time that I get up, which so far have been every day because yay, I'm still alive and everything's fine. This took a weird turn. Thank you again, and I hope you are having a lovely day.